Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Startup Grants course here put on by Alberta Business Grants. I am your moderator today, David Kincaid. First of all, I want to congratulate you on taking a step of starting a business. You're obviously took a small one today, but I think anyone who says, hey, you know what, I'm ready to go forward to the next level here, and I probably heard there were grants out there, or I believe there's grants out there. People told me the grants out there. Not really sure. I've put this together for you because it'll hopefully help you answer a lot of questions at that early stage of the grant and business uh, stage. So let's just jump right into it here. I've got four areas that we're going to cover today. Introduction, because I want you to know a little bit about me, my background. The second thing I want to talk to you about is Grants 101. A lot of people, when they get into grants, they have no kind of idea about, they have a business background, they have an accounting background, they don't have that government background. So I think it's really important that you get that, and it'll go a long way in actually helping you win a grant. Number three, I'm going to give you my best grant tips. These are a lot of tips I've just developed over the years that I've learned the hard way, and I want to give them to you to save you a ton of time and money. And then we'll get into the meat, which is, okay, are there startup grants out there? Yes, there's not a lot, but there are some. But what there also is at this stage are a ton of government programs around resources for helping you get going. So let's get started. So a little bit about me. I've taught political science students at 4 Canadian universities from across the country, actually, New Brunswick, Ontario, Alberta, and BC. I've got a master's degree in political science. I've studied in the PhD program at UBC before I kind of said, nah, I don't want to be a prof. I want to open a company. And so I started writing grants professionally for a living in 2012, and then I incorporated Alberta Business Grants officially in 2015. Right after my graduate degree, I got a job at the official opposition in Alberta, and that's really where I started learning about grants. I actually started as a researcher in finance, which I'm going to teach you about here in a second, which was really following the money. And then after doing that for a few years, I followed the leader of the opposition around the province and learned a lot about government meetings, which is critical also for winning a grant. And I'm going to share that with you as well. So got quite an interesting background, I guess, in terms of government funding, government grants, and of course, being an entrepreneur myself and working with a lot of entrepreneurs over the years, I've seen a lot of different facets of grants. So I want to begin here just about this role at the bottom of the opposition finance. When I got the job, this was in 2004, actually. My MLA at the time, he's passed away, Rick Miller, Edmonton, Rutherford, said, Dave, follow the money. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. And what that really was for me, as I got this, working at the ledge, this is a picture of it here. And in there's the legislature library. And I knew that I had to figure out how money flowed in government. So I spent hours and hours and hours researching how money works and budget documents and estimates and government business plans, and on it goes. But we were pretty amazed at who gets grants. And one of the things I was shocked about early on was, wow, a lot of for-profit businesses get them, a lot of not-for-profits get them, and they come from a range of backgrounds. So this one always caught the attention of the media. It was a frat house that got $21,000 for furniture repair and replacement. Think about that for a minute. So, you think about grants and they're all over the place, and I just thought, wow, that was interesting. So, just to give you an idea of just how many grants there are. So there's for-profit, the not-for-profit, and a range of not-for-profit. You just think they would be going to a vulnerable sector of the population, but it's not true. They go all over the place. Another interesting thing here in this sort of grants, 101 background is, if you think of the NDP, conservative and liberal, you would just think, geez, these people would never agree on pretty much anything, or very, very little. But they all actually really like grants. And it's interesting, but grants are a tool that They're a necessary part of our society, and a lot of nonprofits wouldn't exist without grants. A lot of businesses wouldn't invent new technologies without grants. There's just so much risk. And it also gives the government an incentive to say, hey, you know what? We want to diversify the economy. Let's dangle some carrots out there and let's see if some entrepreneurs will chase it. And they do. And it works really quite well. So just a kind of a fascinating aside to grants. And one last point I'll make on this is they don't like the word grants. So you're going to find just about every single name for a grant something other than a grant. They call it a program, an initiative, a fund, partnership, you name it. They just don't like that word grant. So it just adds to the confusion of grants, right? Like, because I think that's part of it, is because they don't like to use those words. So it's pretty cool. Now, let's get into my best grant tips. And you might be saying, Dave, I purchased a startup package, which we'll get to here in a second. But if you don't learn a couple of these things before you start moving into grants, it can get very painful, as you may have learned already or not. So first things first, just do one at a time. You're already busy. My guess is that you've got a side hustle going on, or you've got a full-time job, you've got family commitments, and you're trying to get a business going. You don't multiple grant applications. Some of them can be very complex. So just do one at a time. The second is extremely important. Call them, meet them, say, hey, I'm interested in this. Can I talk to you about what I'm doing? They'll answer all your questions pretty much before you apply, other than say, hey, we'll give it to you. But they'll let you know if you're a good fit or not, which leads to point 3, which is be honest and upfront, because it all comes out in grants. I've worked in really large grant applications where the process can take a year in some cases. So if you don't have all your boxes checked and your partners are in line, and then when you come time to file the receipt, you have to have everything in order to get those funds. So just be clear and upfront. Say, this is what we're doing. They get that you're a startup, or they get that you're dealing with innovations, that things go sideways. They can be quite flexible. So just don't go in there saying, oh, I'm going to, not tell them this, because believe me, I've written a lot of grants and it all comes out. If the grant isn't a perfect fit, it's a no. Our grant database, which by the time you're getting this, you'll probably have access to, has hundreds of grants in it. So if it's not a perfect fit, just move on. I've done a podcast last week on a guy who was a grant judge, and most of them have a lot of applications. So if they're not a great fit, you're not likely to get it. So save yourself a ton of time and grief and just pass and try to find one that is an absolute perfect fit for you. Your relationship with the grant agency is the goose that lays the golden eggs. I can't stress this enough. Like, especially if you're in tech, environment, agriculture, these type of sectors, what happens is you form a relationship with them, and as the new grants are always coming down the pipe, right? So it becomes pretty exciting that they'll call you and they'll say, hey, we got a new grant coming, you should put in for it. But that relationship is so important with them. So just focus on that. Be nice, be courteous, be respectful, thank you notes, all that type of stuff. Now let's go on to the last slide of my grant tips here. What the government wants is most important, so tailor your message. I teach this in my Grants 101 seminar. All ideas for grants start in an election platform. And they get elected on it. So they have to execute that mandate, and they use grants to support that. So make sure whatever you're doing aligns with what they want. Don't just go off in left field with your messaging if they're saying, hey, look, reducing greenhouse gas emissions is important, and your technology reduces greenhouse gas emissions, but it also, saves a bunch of time. Don't focus on the time. Focus on the greenhouse gas emissions. That's what they want. That's what they're trying to achieve, and that's what they're giving money to. So you give them what they want. Zig Ziglar's got a famous quote. You can get whatever you want in life if you help other people get what they want. So apply that principle as well here. Number 7, if you are in agriculture, then you need to meet your MLA and the Minister of Agriculture. And this could be environment, this could be technology, it doesn't matter. But the minister will sign off on these. They have the final say on taxpayer dollars. So just build a relationship with them. And there's foundations, there's independent committees that evaluate grants. But your MLA and your minister they're beholden to them. Like these grant agencies, like the political elected officials are the bosses. It's their money, so they're beholden to them. So make sure that you leverage that. Just get to know your MLA. I've sent many of my clients off to go, just, hey, you should go meet your MLA. And sure enough, it's just been so good, especially if you got a really good MLA. Be prepared and perceived as low risk when you meet the government. Again, these are risk-adverse people. They have to be stewards of the public resources. So don't go in there and go, you can take some bold innovation, but make sure that you highlight your credibility. Okay? Don't go in there and be like, oh yeah, we're shooting for the fences and you've got not a lot of experience behind you or credibility, because it's just not realistic. So just make sure that you perceived as low risk. And that could be, you don't have to have a lot of experience, but just say, hey, we've done our research. This is what the market says. There's ways you can mitigate risk. Being prepared is probably the best way. Number 9, a lot of grants are first come, first serve versus best come, best serve. Yes, some grants are competitive, but a lot of them are just like they open it up, they accept applications, they approve them, they run out of money, and you're done. So you've got to be on top of this stuff, okay? So make sure that you understand first come, first serve versus best come, versus best serve. Some are competitive, believe me, but some are just get your application in. And finally, not to discourage you, of course, but the return on investment is enormous. I spent 41 and a half hours last week writing a grant for $100,000. If the client wins that's an enormous return for them, right? I mean, they just 1 week get $100,000 of pure profit. I mean, that at the end of the year could just be added to their bottom line, which could be used for all kinds of important things, as you can only imagine, from reinvesting or just you let your imagination run wild. So the ROI is huge. It just takes a little bit of work, but it's worth it. Okay, let's move in now to startup grants and resources. So for startup grants, there's 6 main ones. 2 in the tech sector, the micro voucher. Alberta Innovates for $10,000. That's kind of when you're starting out at that phase of, hey, I want to get a grant. In the Business in Canada Innovation Program, which is another great one that not a lot of people know about, and they'll give you your first contract. So, I mean, just can you imagine? It just light up your world. If you're an Indigenous background, there's one that's almost $100,000. There's $5,000 for the Women Entrepreneurship Fund. Agriculture here in Alberta has a Products to Markets program for new entrants. And my favorite one of all time is Self-Employment Program. And I've done a podcast with Deb on this. So I'll also be putting the link. You'll be able to listen to the podcast as I move and get more technical. I'm going to record that meeting and have it in here as well. But you can learn more about it as well. So if you're listening to this on the weekend or in the evening or before work or on your way to work, you can be aware of it. If there's a downloadable document with all of these resources that explain them in this area. So I just want to highlight them here. Download the document and you'll see all the kind of descriptions and deadlines, etc. there. So not an enormous amount of startup grants, given that we have hundreds and hundreds in our grant database. So what that means is most grants are for more established companies, but there are these ones. But you'd have to be living on an island to not be aware of all of these resources around startup, right? So I've grouped them here for you as Alberta, Canada. I'm just going to go through these quick. Edmonton and area, Calgary and area. In some of these, if you're listening to this outside of those big areas, some of these areas you can track down locally in your area. But there's the Business Link, Alberta Women Entrepreneurs, Startup Canada, Alberta Enterprise, which is kind of like venture capital stuff, pretty interesting. BDC, where you can get a loan. ATB Entrepreneur Center has some funding initiatives. Check out Western Economic Diversification. Community Futures, one of my best friends did a grant like that, started a business 11 years ago. It's still going to this day, and he's opening up another one. It's amazing. around the Edmonton area, there's Tech Edmonton, Startup Edmonton, Economic Development, Microbusiness Training, Self-Employment Training. I actually took that program, which is a phenomenal program. NABI, the Northern Alberta Business Incubator, is an awesome resource. They have coaching and a lot of I think they have a coaching program that is, if you're starting out, it's got phenomenal rates. And of course, here's a list for Calgary as well. So a ton of startup resources, but when it comes to money, a few grants, mostly at the loan space. Here's some other interesting stuff. There's the Tundra ACE program, which you can look into. They help kind of commercialize, bring your technology to commercialization. District Adventures Accelerator programs for the food sectors. That's with Arlene Dickinson. There's Kinetic Energy Tech. You can check that out. There's some, again, some Métis, some disability programs there, as well as Agriculture Financial Service Corporation, where you can get money if you're in the egg sector. So a lot of resources. And I know when I started out, I kind of got overwhelmed. I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? What is this? And I'll keep adding to this over time. But my goal with this short course was for you to say, okay, what grants are out there? What funding resources are out there? You can get quickly. You can download the document. You can have it with you and get you rolling to the next stage quickly and not waste a lot of time. I see a lot of people just, grants. And, I just thought, here it is. So I hope it really kind of saves you a bunch of time. Get you all that stuff and get you rolling quick. So I want to congratulate you. Starting a business is an enormous, rewarding journey. I've been on it myself since 2012, and I can tell you there are a few things in life more rewarding than owning your own business and getting your time back. So, yeah, that's basically it. You can reach out to me down at the bottom there by phone, email, or my website. There's a ton of information in my blog. My podcast is up there where I interview grant agencies, people that won grants, all kinds of resources there as well. And by the time you're listening to this, I've got a membership that people who are with us every month, we have a closed Facebook group where we do constant answer questions and do interviews with folks in their webinars where you can ask people and reach out to me and say, hey, Dave, can you do something on do an interview on something else and latest information on grant. So that's it. I wanted to keep this fairly short. I hope you found it valuable, and hope you really take the next step and start your business, because it is an amazing, amazing thing to do. And if I can be of service, by all means, there's my contact information. Okay, thanks, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.